In the shadows of an ancient forest, hidden behind a shroud of vines, stood a wishing well. This well could only be discovered by those whose hearts burned with desperate desires for fulfillment. Yet, the allure of its magic came at a steep cost. To have a wish granted, one must surrender something of immense value. One might wonder the nature of the individuals who would go to such lengths to pursue their wishes. Perhaps it is a soul so consumed by longing that it drives them to take extreme measures. Our story begins with a man and a woman. They lived a simple life in a quaint cabin nestled deep in the woods. Each day, the man would go out to hunt and gather wood for fire. The woman would send him off with a smile and spend her mornings knitting in her little rocking chair. In the afternoons, she would prepare the man's favorite meat stew for dinner, filling their home with the scent of love and comfort. It was just the two of them. They had once yearned for a child, but were never blessed with one. They told themselves that two was a good number, and at least they had each other. On one particular day, the man went out for his usual work in the forest, while the woman sat in her rocking chair, knitting and waiting for his return. That was the day that changed everything. The man returned, dragging himself through the door, his leg marred by a deep, crimson gash. Blood trickled down his leg with every step he took, leaving a trail of red on the wooden floor. The woman urged him to have the wound treated, but he reassured her that it would heal with sufficient rest. She reluctantly agreed, a decision she would come to regret. The wound festered, and the man grew weak and feverish. The woman tended to him day and night, devoting herself to his care, her heart aching with each passing moment. As the seasons changed and the nights grew colder, so did the man. The light in his eyes began to dim. Eventually, he never woke again. Life went on for the woman, but she was merely a ghost of herself, wandering through a hollow existence. Each morning, she sat in her rocking chair, knitting away. She made stew in the afternoons, always for two, keeping the door open for the person who would no longer walk through it. Her days passed like a film on repeat. And finally, without realizing it, the sweater she had been knitting was complete. The sweater that was once an embodiment of her love became a symbol of her grief. She found herself lost, unsure of her purpose in life. As she held the sweater in her arms and wept, an orange glow shining through the windows illuminated the wooden house. The woman raised her head and closed her eyes, feeling warmth on her face, and smiled. It was time. The next morning, she cleaned fervently, ensuring every corner of the house was spotless. She laid the sweater on the bed, and after one last look, walked out of the home she had shared with the man for the last 15 years. She ventured into the woods with nothing but the clothes on her back. She walked endlessly, her feet covered in cuts and dirt, until she reached the edge of the forest. The woman dragged her bloodied feet to a cliffside and collapsed onto the ground. Her eyes followed the flow of the currents below, jagged rocks lurking beneath the surface. Coldness nipped at her skin, and pain loomed on the horizon, but freedom beckoned. With her legs dangling over the cliff's edge, she inched closer, hypnotized by the sound of water crashing against the rocks. Just as she was prepared to let go, a voice suddenly pulled her out of her trance. "Don't," she gasped, her head whipping around only to find no one there. Turning her attention back to the steep drop before her, she convinced herself she had hallucinated the voice when she heard it again, this time clearer, calling for her. "Why do you linger here, my love?" The voice, familiar and aching, asked. A voice she recognized from her dreams every night. The voice, carried by the wind, wrapped around her like a long-lost embrace, guiding her to an area of the forest where the trees were so dense that only thin streaks of light passed through the gaps in the leaves. The voice stopped as the woman approached a wall of overgrown vines hanging from the branches. Brushing past the vines, she arrived at a clearing with a well. It looked like an ordinary well, but something about it drew her in. She cautiously took a step closer, then another. Peering into the depths, she saw not her reflection in the water, but the smiling face of her love gazing back up at her. "Hello, my darling," the man greeted her. The woman spent every waking moment by the well, talking to the man and reminiscing about their past. Her once lush and soft blonde hair had become dry and brittle, and the clothes she wore hung loosely off her frail frame. At times, she lacked the strength to sit up and would lie against the well, listening to the man's voice. She considered finding some food to replenish her energy, but feared what might happen if she left. Although the man was right there, gazing lovingly at her as he used to, it was no longer enough. She yearned for more. "There is a way we could be together," the man said. "You need only to visualize your wish in your head, but be prepared to sacrifice something dear." The woman rushed home, desperation swelling within her. She rifled through cupboards and dressers for anything of value. Lying forgotten in one of the drawers was the locket that the man had given her during their first year together. With trembling hands, she opened it to reveal an old portrait of them in their younger years. Both were smiling shyly at the camera, with his hands on her shoulders, partly hidden by her long golden locks. He had once told her that her hair reminded him of the morning sun that greeted him as he left for work. His heart warmed by the thought of returning to her at the end of the day. With his words echoing in her mind, the woman took the axe that had lain dormant by the fireplace and brought it back to the well. Kneeling, she grasped her braid and, with a shuddering breath, sliced the axe through her hair. She casted the braid into the well and stood back, her heart racing, praying for a miracle. She extended a hand towards the man, yet he shook his head, sorrow etched on his face. "What you've offered is a token of your beauty, but that alone is not enough for what you seek," he murmured, his voice heavy with heartache. "To bring me back, you must be willing to part with something that represents our bond." The woman gazed at the ring that adorned the fourth finger of her left hand. The ring was a promise of their loyalty and a representation of their union. The fourth finger, a symbol of their love, was said to be a connection to the heart. Driven to the brink, it compelled her to consider actions she never thought she would take. The fear of losing everything ignited a fierce determination to hold on to what was slipping away. As the blade sank into her flesh, she recalled the vows they exchanged at the altar and their dreams of a future together. The water rippled as her finger dropped into the well, a dot of crimson quickly spreading and dyeing the water pale red. The last feeling of hope dissipated as her sacrifice, though significant, was deemed not a true reflection of her heart's desire. Overwhelmed by despair, the weight of her longing for him intensified, and she grappled with the realization that her love might not be enough to bridge the gap between life and death. As she processed his words, a profound thought struck her. Her eyes had always been the windows through which she viewed the world and her love for him. They had witnessed both the beauty of their time together and the pain of his absence. In that moment, she understood that to truly honor her love, she must give up the very thing that allowed her to see him. The woman held her eyes in the palm of her hand above the well, her grip gradually loosening until the precious pearls of memory slipped out of her grasp. As soon as they touched the surface of the water, the well began to glow with a brilliant light. A surge of warmth enveloped the woman. She sensed a presence in front of her and reached out hesitantly, her fingers grazing the familiar contours of the man's face, its once smooth skin now a patchwork of peeling, mottled layers, cold to the touch. The man gently cupped the woman's cheeks, stroking them softly. He pressed a tender kiss to her lips, then another on the eyes she willingly sacrificed for him. Wrapped in each other's embrace, they plunged into the well, disappearing into the dark waters. Together for eternity,